way back in 1971 when I was just 6 years old. We used to walk down to the banks of the Feather River and look across at the most beautiful peach orchards on this planet. And then one day in May, if we looked again, we would have seen the most evil and hideous murder scene in American history. We didn't look, but my dad did. He was there. I'm Bob Day, and I'll be right back with another great but evil American story.
Guilty. Blood on my hands. Blood on my face. Guilty. Guilty in my days.
One night way back in May of 1971, a local farmer was walking through his orchard on the way home and discovered a huge hole in his orchard. He didn't dig it. It was about 7 feet long, 3 feet wide, and about 4 feet deep. Well, it was getting dark and he was tired, so he just went on home and figured he'd check out the hole again in the morning. And when he did, he found the hole was filled. The farmer freaked and booked all the way home as quick as he could, and when he got there, called the Sutter County Sheriff's Department, who was on the scene in minutes with shovels in hand. One of them was my dad. With the hole having been freshly filled, it didn't take long at all for the cops to hit something. My dad said it was a foot, then the legs, with the pants around the ankles. And his head was mutilated. My dad was a sergeant with Sutter County at the time and stood by the side of that and every one of the next 24 holes just like it. And he swore many times throughout his life that there were at least a dozen more, which they had never found. Every gory grave that they did find contained the same thing, except one, which contained the body of an unknown woman. The rest were all male. Homeless vagrants, bums, migrant farm workers. Either way, they all had their pants around their ankles and their heads, all of their heads, were mutilated. It didn't take long for my dad and the others to pick up a good lead on the killer, because although he may have been one evil he apparently wasn't very damn smart, because several graves contained receipts which had fallen out of the killer's pocket. I guess that's how it goes when you're working in the dark, huh? Man. The receipts were all made out to one man, Juan Corona. Juan Corona was a Mexican immigrant who came here in the 1950s and went to work in the farms and later became a labor contractor. Well, Juan Corona was picked up at his home on a local Yuba City area farm, actually quite close to the abominable burial grounds. In his home, my dad and the others not only found the knife, the machete, and a bunch of blood-soaked clothes, they also found a list. The list had several, but not all, of Corona's victims on it. Apparently, Juan Corona had just recently started the list as a way of, kicking up the kink, I guess you might say. Well, that list was what got Juan Corona in the end and sent him to prison for hopefully the rest of his life. Yes, he is still alive and still in prison. Don't relax yet, though, 'cause this story ain't over. Here's the scary part. Juan Corona had a partner in crime who, walked. Yeah, he walked. And he is still, as far as we know, a free man. And he may be here. His name is Natividad Corona, Juan's brother. He owned a cafe in Marysville until he got sued for beating and molesting a teenage boy in the restroom. And at first, everybody thought that Natividad fled to Mexico, which he may have done. But nonetheless, according to my dad and the others, he came back. In fact, he came back later, and it is said that he actually sat in the courtroom, disguised as a woman, watched his own brother Juan be tried for America's worst murders. Of course, it wasn't known until after the fact. Either way, Natividad Corona walked again. He was gone. But then again, is he? Oh, Juan almost walked too, on technicalities. See, they couldn't tie him to the death list without a current and honest handwriting sample, and he just would not give one. So my dad got a bright idea one morning and told him he was going to be moved to another part of the jail, needed to write his mom and give her the new address, which he did. Then my dad made a photocopy of the letter before he mailed it and gave it to the prosecutor. And that was what locked up Juan Corona. Since then, Juan Corona has vowed that he would someday get out of prison and come after Bob Day. And I got news for him. Two things. The Bob Day he wants is gone. The Bob Day he would get, he doesn't want. Corona tried to kick up the kink with the death list, and that's what bit him in the ass. A letter to his mommy. But there's one hidden horror for this Halloween. Natividad Corona is still here. Somewhere. So while you're out there on the side streets and outer edges of town this Halloween night, going from house to house, sometimes having to walk through the long, dark, quiet shadows, if you're a man, remember this. Corona walked. Happy Halloween. I'm Bob Day, and I've just told you another great, true, and evil American story.
Blood on my hands, mud on my face. Guilty. Blood